What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tomatolito Show. And what a Friday to remember. July 9th, 2021 is a Friday to remember. Golden Boy Promotions puts on a card of a lifetime. The matchmaking at Golden Boy is second to none. I've said it before and I stand by it. I've seen the other events so far this year, and you have 1, 2, sometimes even 3 good fights. And Top Rank has done a good job with it, usually when they're opening the televised portion of it. But that's about it. The Showtime cards are usually entertaining. Usually the showbox are entertaining across the board because they're full of prospects and so forth. Similar to the feel of like Ring City USA. Ring City USA did an amazing job. I don't know why they're still not back. They're taking a long break, but Ring City USA did an amazing job. Card after card after card. The ones that they put together in Puerto Rico earlier this year. Other than that, I mean, traditional boxing, an entire card full of boxing with the traditional DJ out in the stadium. No concerts, no BS, just boxing for the boxing aficionados, for the casuals, and for the hardcores at that. Golden Boy puts on amazing cards, and it's all thanks to their matchmaking. They have very good matchmakers, and these fights are amazing from start to finish. Now, I say what a Friday it was because the entire Friday, today, I end up spending basically all day watching the entire card. I believe I missed maybe 1 fight, maybe 2 fights at that. Other than that, I caught the entire thing. They had a free, the first portion of the card was free on YouTube by way of DAZN. You could also catch it on the Golden Boy Promotions Facebook fan page. And it was free to the public, and it was great, and there was no public on the stands, and you could see as people are starting to walk in. The event tonight took place, or today and tonight took place at the Bank of California Stadium, where the soccer team, the MLS soccer team, the LAFC play. That's their home. Golden Boy Promotions put on a full-on event as if it was a weekend. It's a Friday. It's the start to a weekend. And the first fight kicked off at noon. People are still at work. And Golden Boy Promotions did not give a crap that you were still at work. They put on their fights and they went on with the show. The fights were so good, and one of the things that made it so enjoyable was the commentating crew. Beto Duran, the famous, renowned Beto Duran from Duran Sports, he was awesome on the microphone today. Big fan of his. He was awesome on the microphone, and his co-host was Blair the Flair Cobb. Those two made an amazing team earlier today. And they had other people joining them. That Robert Garcia stopped by at one point, as he was in the corner several times throughout the day. He stopped by. Marlon Sparza was there. Miguel Cotto stopped by. It was entertaining. That portion of the show leading to the main card was entertaining as hell, and it kept me from doing what I was supposed to do today. I ended up sitting around watching the card, trying to get stuff done, but all the stuff that I had to do today, I ended up putting aside because I got hooked. I'm a sucker for good conversation, good boxing, good matches at that. And that's why I'm saying amazing matchmaking on behalf of Golden Boy, because every single one of these fights was exciting. All these fighters showed up to just leave it all. Even if there was no fans in the stands, they were showing up to leave it all. We had a young prospect in Morales take on a journeyman out of Mexico, young prospect out of San Antonio. He ends up taking the fight to him. He gets bloodied. He came away with the decision, a questionable decision at that, but he's the one that they were pushing for. You saw Joel Diaz throughout the day. He stopped by as well. Joel Diaz was in the corner several times throughout the day as well. Andy Ruiz made an appearance because he was backing one of the fighters who made his debut, his boxing debut today. It was packed. Now for the non-DAZN portion, or the non-paid portion, I guess the free portion, which was on YouTube, the main event ended up being Sullivan Barrera out of Phoenix, Arizona, against Naoko Fujioka. Naoko Fujioka is the long-reigning Japanese fighter, 5-time champion, and the most decorated Japanese boxer of all time, male or female. The most decorated Japanese boxer of all time. She stepped into the ring at 45 years of age with the title, and Sullivan Barrera was looking to become a world champion and came up short in that main event of the first portion of the card. It hurt me to see that because I've been a big fan of Sullivan Barrera's. I've seen the majority of Sullivan Barrera's career, and I see the improvement. And Sullivan Barrera's performance today, dating back to her last performance against Marlon Esparza, it's amazing and impressive to see how much she improved in a matter of one fight. Her boxing was so fluid today. It was so effortless, the way that she was making this fight happen. She was bringing the fight to Fujioka. Her movement, her speed, the way that she was switching angles. She was bobbing and weaving and switching her punches. She was switching stances constantly and making it hard for Fujioka. And she did this for the first 4 to 5 rounds. Fujioka ended up, her attack was just consistent. And she ended up figuring out the angles that Barrera was providing or posing to her by the 6th round. By the 7th round, Fujioka had the strongest round of the fight for her side. And she didn't let off. And it looked like Sullivan Barrera had slowed down a bit. She took the fight so hard to Fujioka in the first half of the fight that she started gassing. Her speed was gone. Her hands were gone. The output was gone. And she continued to swing and land. Every so often, she would be successful with the 1 and 2. Other than that, she didn't have much to offer for the majority of the second half of the fight. Whenever they would end up leading towards the ropes, Fujioka would land the harder shots, with Sullivan Barrera landing good shots to exit the close proximity between her and Fujioka and gain her spacing back. Other than that, Fujioka took control of the second half of the fight, and she ends up getting the decision win over Sullivan Barrera. Nobody got dropped. Both of them were banged up quite a bit. Both of them were marked up. Sullivan Barrera easily, in my eyes, the way that I was watching the fight, she easily took 5 rounds, but it wasn't a draw. If it could have been a draw, maybe. It was that type of fight. Now, again, leave it to the judges to muddy up a perfectly good fight. You guys have heard me say this time and time and time again, and some moron that was in there ends up scoring a 98-91 score. It's a 10-round championship fight. As you know, women fight 10 rounds for championship fights, not the 12, and they fight 2-minute rounds, not 3-minute rounds like the men do. They end up scoring this 98-91 for Fujioka. What fight were they watching? This happens over and over and over again, and it's embarrassing to the sport. It's a detriment to the sport. It's depleting to the fighters who leave it all out there on the ring time and again. And you have these moron judges who either don't want to be there or are too lazy to actually pay attention, or maybe they don't even know what the hell they're looking at, yet they continue to get invited back by these sanctioning bodies and these commissions to judge fights that matter, title fights. These are not debut fights. This is a title fight. This is people's livelihoods. And they end up scoring a 98-91 fight. I have no idea what the hell fight they were watching. Sullivan Barrera easily took 4 to 5 rounds out of that fight. This should have been a 7-5. Scored 7-5 for Fujioka. A draw would have been understandable. If all of them would have called a draw, the title still wouldn't have changed hands. Fujioka keeps her titles. But listen, it was that close of a fight. If they would have called an 8-4 fight, I would have been okay with it. It was that type of fight, and there were some rounds that Sullivan would squeeze out in the early part of the fight where Fujioka was trying to start generating her style and find her rhythm. But Sullivan would end up winning those rounds by way of succession or output. A 98-91 score, it just muddied the entire fight and the effort that Sullivan Barrera left out there in the ring. The sweat, the blood, the blemishes on her face, it's a spit to her face, to the work, the camp, the sacrifice that she did leading up to the fight, and all the work that she did while up on the ring. 98-91, one of the judges. Nonetheless, ignore the judge. It was an entertaining fight. It was the best performance I've seen Sullivan Barrera have to date. And I was impressed to see how well she performed since her last outing versus Marlon Sparsa, which means she's doing a lot of things right in her camp. Her team, she and her team are working well together, and it's a matter of time until she gets her hands around one of these major world titles. It was a great effort by her. She came up short by as deemed by the judges, but it is what it is. It is what it is. It sucks. I wanted to see her win, especially because her birthday was yesterday, on the 8th. I wanted to see her win. She's based out of Phoenix. As you know, the Phoenix Suns, the basketball team, is currently in the finals. As we stand today, as of this recording, the Phoenix Suns find themselves with a 2-0 lead, defending their home court and heading into Milwaukee. They're playing the Milwaukee Bucks. So it would have been great for her to bring a title to Phoenix, as the Phoenix Suns are in the middle of a battle trying to do the same thing for the city. It would have been great. It would have been great. And she was very close. The way that she came out, she was way ahead of Fujioka. And eventually, as she started tapering down, Fujioka started picking up the pace, the experience. She's 45 years of age. She's a 5-time champ. And like I said, she's the most decorated champion that Japan has had as a boxer to date, male or female. Naoka Fujioka, no joke. Her last fight was actually a draw against Tenkai Tsunami, who was also in the card defending her title against Seniesa Estrada in the main portion of the DAZN card. So these are amazing fighters coming out of Japan. We've talked about Nakatani. We've talked about Inoue. These guys there's a lot of talent coming out of Japan, and they're monstrous at that in their efforts. Sullivan Barrera comes up short. There was really, really, really good fights in this portion. The commentary was awesome. The commentary is what kept me hooked throughout the early portion. Miguel Gaona is the kid that ended up walking out. Cool story on his behalf. He was an amateur fighter. This was his debut as a professional boxer. He was an amateur fighter at one point. He ended up basically choosing to work and choosing to make money over boxing because boxing wasn't providing for him. He ended up buying or starting a body shop, a vehicle body shop or a repair shop, and was very successful at it, very well known for doing some custom work for numerous high-profile people, and the commentary was pretty awesome because they're mentioning, like, who is this guy? He's debuting and he's already walking in or stepping into the ring with 100,000 followers on his social media account. And so popular kid, has earned his way, and he couldn't stay away from the sport of boxing. He made his professional debut and he was successful. It was a 4-round fight. He was successful against Gilberto Aguilar, who was 0-2 stepping into the fight. This is a lightweight division, 135-pound division. Miguel Gaona gets his first victory. Other fights, Joel Diaz was in the corner of Mihai Nistor, a heavyweight fight against Colby Madison, and that was a banger of a fight. There were low blows, there were head clashes. It was a banger of a heavyweight style fight, and Colby Madison ends up taking the favorite Nistor down multiple times, hurting him, and in the end, Nistor ends up landing the heavier punches and stops Colby Madison in round 2 after being dropped himself several times. So Mihai Nistor wins again, and Jojo Diaz looked good as a corner, as a trainer. One of the fights that ended up taking the attention, aside from the Sulamarbina Fujioka main event to the first portion of the card, was the Brian Chevalier, who's out of Puerto Rico. He fought James Wilkins, and that fight was just second to none. That could have been a main event on a Ring City USA card. It could have been a main event on a Showbox type card. It could have been an opening fight for any card. The names are not that popular. Chevalier fights for Miguel Cotto Promotions. James Wilkins out of Staten Island. And the way that they fought, it was just, wow, impressive. Beyond impressed with the effort that both of these fighters put out today. At the end, this fight was so close that it could have gone either way. If it would have been a draw, everybody would have been happy, including the fighters. However, the judges decided that Chevalier had done enough to get the victory. He does get awarded the victory. He also wins the vacant. This fight, they were both fighting for the vacant WBO, NABO featherweight title. And Chevalier is a new champion. Aside from that, not only does he walk away with the victory, he walks away with the new title, and he walks away with a fiance because he takes the knee, he proposes to his girlfriend, and she said yes. And the little bit of crowd that was present at that moment, everybody cheered. The commentary was funny as heck on the sideline by Duran and Blair the Flair. It was funny. Great looking girl, by the way, the Chevalier. Congratulations just on that. I mean, he got a title. He's got a great looking girl. She said yes. He's got a fiance. Life is on the up and up for Brian Chevalier. Congratulations to him, and congratulations to Miguel Cotto, because he's got a successful fighter in his promotional company. From there, the only other one that stands out to me is Lamont Roach earlier in the day. Lamont Roach, who's as live a dog as there is in a 130-pound division. You guys hear me talk about Asinga Fuzile. We could talk about Chris Colbert, right? Who just beat Nayan Bayar a few days back. on the Showtime card. He's in the 130-pound division. He ends up winning an interim version to a title as well. And very brash, very outspoken, likes attention, Chris Colbert, right? And he had a decent performance against Nayan Bayar. Nayan Bayar, almost similar. This fight almost reminded me of Jermall Charlo against Macias, because the fighter that was supposed to win did win. The scorecards reflected that the fight was one-sided. However, if you watch the fight, you saw that it was not an easy task to get from point A to point B. Jermall Charlo struggled to get from point A to point B, and his eye was nearly shut. Yet he, by way of points, by way of scoring, by way of output and work, Jermall Charlo was winning each and every round, yet he was getting hurt every so often. This was the same case with Chris Colbert. He started, I don't know if it's Colbert or Colbert. I always get that Colbert when I see that name just because of that talk show host, but it could very well be Colbert, Chris Colbert. So I'll stick with that. He showed up looking to put out his opponent, and by the fourth round, he starts slowing down. By the second round, he had thrown everything at him. By the fourth round, he's gassing. His speed is gone, or at least diminished. His the punching output diminishes a lot more, and it's because he was just throwing everything with bad intentions, looking to put this guy out. And this guy was almost like a descendant of Nate Diaz, just a zombie, just kept coming forward, kept landing some strong punches, and kept bringing the fight to Colbert. As the fight proceeded, Colbert ended up finding several times. He ended up having some serious conversations with himself throughout this fight, because he was having a hard time. He couldn't pick up, he couldn't put out this opponent like he planned to do. So he had to be honest with himself. His power was not going to be enough, but he still needed to etch out this victory and get it to a decision win, or continue to try to put this guy out. But by the time, if he chose option B, his power, his breathing was already gone. It was already affected. His stamina was starting to be affected, and his power was not there anymore. His power was almost depleting, to see that he threw everything at Nayan Bayar and he wasn't able to put him out. Nayan Bayar kept coming forward, kept hitting him. In the end, Colbert gets the decision win, and very humbly, he admits in the post-fight interview that Nayan Bayar possessed some really good power, and he got shaken several times throughout that fight. Even though he had the higher output, he was hit very hard and very clean by Nayan Bayar, who nearly pulled off the upset, or at least was attempting to pull off the upset. He had chances to do so. Colbert, the professional that he is, the young up-and-coming prospect that he is, he's a who's who. He gets his hands around an interim version of a title, and now he's one of the main dogs. So that was a performance that happened just a few days back, and this brings me back to that same division, because Lamont Roach puts his opponent out in round 2. Lamont Roach disposes of Daniel Rosas in round 2. He drops him from a nasty body shot. Daniel Rosas does not recover, and Lamont Roach gets the knockout victory. 20-1 Lamont Roach. He's as live a dog as anybody, and I know I've mentioned Lamont Roach in past episodes, especially because he's someone he's a force to be reckoned with in this division. I've mentioned Asinga Fuzile. Chris Colbert's also an up-and-coming prospect with very good speed, decent power, but his stamina seems to fade out because he's not mitigating the amount of power that he's throwing. So his stamina seems to run out around the 4th, 5th round, and he struggles to see these fights through. He hasn't had many fights that he's seen through all the way to the end like he did against Nayan Bayar. He's used to putting his opponents out and looking impressive each time out. This is what happened on this one, and some of his holes were exposed because of a journeyman come forward fighter like Nayan Bayar, who ended up poking poking at all these holes in Chris Colbert's game. So he's there. Lamont Roach at 130 pounds is one of the ones that's right there. He's a good fighter, nearing his point where he's about to start breaking into being a great fighter. But in order for him to break into becoming a great fighter, he needs better opposition. He's had good opposition in the past. He needs to continue fighting these top names. If he gets in there with the Shakur Stevenson, he would be a hard time for Shakur Stevenson. I think he would beat Nasinga Fusile. I think he would beat a Chris Colbert. But he would start struggling with the Shakur Stevenson. Although he would give him some trouble, he would probably struggle with a Jamel Herring. He would struggle with a Bercheltero Valdez. It's just Lamont Roach he's up there. He's a big talent. And by struggling doesn't mean that he would lose. I'm just saying he would have a hard time fighting these guys. I'm not saying anything else, because he's very smart. He's got good IQ, good angles, good boxing overall. And on any given night, he would probably figure out these guys or whoever's across the ring from him, even if it's one of these big name guys in that division, and pull out the victory against them. Other than that, Sullivan Barrera topped off that first portion of the card. We move on to the main event, and the main event was Hector Tanajara against William Cepeda in what was a super entertaining fight. Holy crap. Tanajara out of Robert Garcia's gym. Great fighter, good pedigree on his side. William Cepeda, known as El Camarón, the shrimp, because he's a little bit shorter in stature. Very good boxing and good power, good release of power on his end. He ends up stopping Robert Garcia's protege to end round 6. Robert Garcia's corner deems for Tanajara to not come out and answer the bell for the 7th round, and the fight is stopped. William Cepeda comes away with the win. He remains undefeated. He is now 23-0. And Hector Tanajara suffers his first defeat. He walked into the ring as a 19-0 fighter. He is now 19-1. It was a tough phone booth style type of fight. They went back and forth. They exchanged some power punches, Cepeda catching the better of the exchanges, and eventually it proved to be too much for Tanajara. At least it did for the corner, as they deemed it that he had taken enough damage, and they stopped the fight at the end of the 6th round. The next fight, Tenkai Tsunami, who we were speaking about a little bit earlier, who had a draw against Naoko Fujioka, who was facing Sullivan Barrera and successfully defended her title. Fujioka, the most decorated boxer in Japan's boxing history to date, both male and female, a 5-time champion, had a draw against a very tough Tenkai Tsunami, who was stepping into the ring with the WBO female light flyweight title. Seniesa Estrada was across the ring from her, and Seniesa Estrada is a monster. She walked into this fight at 20-0. Tenkai Tsunami walked into this at 28-12 with one draw. That one draw coming against Fujioka. A lot of the losses that she's had have come to Hispanic fighters, because the Hispanic fighting style is a lot more of a come forward and pressing the action style. Tenkai Tsunami did not expect what she was running into today, and Seniesa Estrada was on a mission. Just like Sullivan Barrera started strong and fast, Seniesa Estrada started the same way. SUPERBAD is no joke. I've said it this year. I've said it time and again. SUPERBAD will be a household name by the time that we're closing the books on 2021. Mark my words. I know that she's a star in the making. By the end of this year, she will be a household name. Something similar to a Loma or a Canelo, maybe not as high as a Canelo, but she'll be a known name. At the minimum, she'll be maybe like an Edgar Berlanga who got popular because of his knockout streak. Well, Seniesa Estrada defeated Tenkai Tsunami, took the fight to her from the very onset of the fight, and it was a very, very good back and forth fight where Seniesa Estrada, her speed, her punch output, the way that she was putting punches together, the combinations, the angles that she was using, she was quickly switching, giving her looks from as a southpaw and orthodox, switching back and forth. Her stances were switching back and forth. It was very good movement on her behalf. She walked in on a mission, wanting to get this title at 108. Her last outing, she got the title against Avispa Ortiz at 105. Now she's getting the title at 108. She has the title at 108. Solid victory for her over Tenkai Tsunami. Tenkai Tsunami, even though the scorecards reflected one thing, similar to what we were talking about earlier, Tenkai Tsunami did land some good punches on Seniesa Estrada. Seniesa Estrada was a little bit marked up. She did get hurt. She got staggered on several exchanges against Tenkai Tsunami. But Seniesa Estrada was on a mission. She was possessed. She was landing everything, at least majority of the output that she was putting out there. It was a very good showing by her, and she improved. This was a better version of Seniesa Estrada than what we saw against Anabel Ortiz back in March. The speed that she's possessing now and the power, the follow-through on these punches is something that we weren't seeing back in March or even against Marlon Sparsa or opponents in the past. I mean, other than that, we got Atkins, right? And that fight ended in 7 seconds. Seniesa Estrada is a force to be reckoned with. She now has a title at 105. She has a world title at 108, real titles. And she may be going up to 112 trying to get a title in a third division, but her goal is to unify these two divisions, unify 105 and unify 108-pound division. Seniesa Estrada is a star. In my eyes, she's no longer a star in the making. She's a star. She's someone that people need to recognize, and she's going to put women's boxing on the top of the heap as far as the United States is concerned. Michaela Mayer is also here. You got Katie Taylor across the pond over in Ireland. Clarissa Shields, also an American fighter, very accomplished, who is now campaigning in MMA, but still looking to defend her titles in boxing. A super decorated fighter as an Olympian, as an amateur, and as a professional now, Clarissa Shields. Seniesa Estrada is a little bit on a different level. She doesn't have the Olympic past. She doesn't have the amateur past, although she has a very strong amateur record. She doesn't have that notoriety as Clarissa Shields or so forth, some of these fighters. Nonetheless, as a professional, she's perfect. She improves to 21-0. She has 2 world titles around her now, and she's looking for more. She's looking to unify, and the fighters just don't want to do it. Too much risk. They're hanging on to these titles, and she's looking to take them and take ownership of all of them at 105 and 108. And even she wasn't opposed to fighting Marlon Sparsa once again. She said it loud and clear. I don't feel like there's any unfinished business between me and her because I beat her convincingly, but we could either fight again or, hell, we may very well even fight in the parking lot later today. That was her post-fight interview in the ring. That was pretty funny. She's very charismatic, and I can't wait to see her next fight. Hopefully it's against Tina Ruprecht, maybe a Yokasta Valle for 105, or any of the other champions at 108, so she could start unifying these divisions, these two divisions, and accomplish the goals that she's setting out to accomplish. Congratulations to her dad, Joe Cool Estrada. Congratulations to Seniesa SUPERBAD Estrada. Congratulations to Islos, because one of your own has won another world championship in the sport of boxing. So that was pretty exciting. In my opinion, this should have been the co-main event. And the next fight we're about to talk about should have been the main event of the night. Whereas the main event of the night should have been either the supporting card or even the third slot in the main event. Good fight, good fighters, popular fighters, but Seniesa Estrada needs to headline her own event fairly soon, and she's going to break new ground in women's boxing, and she'll be a household name in no time. So we move on to the next fight. The next fight, we see JoJo Diaz making his debut in the lightweight division at 135 pounds against none other than Javier Fortuna. The puzzle, the strategy that is Javier Fortuna. He poses problems for every fighter. He's fast, he's slick, he poses different looks. Very impressive boxing by Javier Fortuna each time out. This was going to be for the WBC's interim lightweight championship, an interim version to the title that Devin Haney holds, and an interim version to Devin Haney's title, whereas Teofimo Lopez holds the franchise version of the WBC in that division. JoJo, as you remember, JoJo Diaz ended up losing his IBF title on the scales when he was fighting Shakhtar Rakimov in the 130-pound division. They end up having a draw. Even if he would have won, he had no chance of regaining his title, so the only one that would have won was Rakimov. The fight was so close that it ended up being deemed a draw, and JoJo Diaz left his 130-pound title on the scales. He was one of the people to recognize in the 130-pound division. Now that title's vacant, and we most recently saw Martin Ward against Asinga Fuzile have a fight for contendership towards that title. So to date, that title's still vacant. In the 130-pound division, JoJo Diaz was not going to wait around for that. He took on the challenge of Javier Fortuna. Remember, Fortuna was supposed to fight Ryan Garcia at one point. That didn't materialize as Garcia ended up falling out due to mental health problems. So he decided to take some time off. Javier Fortuna, JoJo Diaz was supposed to be a fight in which Fortuna, the bigger fighter, someone who's campaigned a larger portion of his career in this division, was supposed to put out and dominate the smaller fighter. But it wasn't the case. JoJo Diaz came to win. JoJo Diaz came to fight. There was a headbutt around the second round where JoJo Diaz ends up cutting up and bleeding on the left side of his face, a cut that's happened before, and it didn't turn out to be a problem. I mean, at times you would see him wipe and so forth, but it wasn't much of a problem. He ended up doing fairly good for himself, and provided really, really good strategic boxing to every single one of the looks that Javier Fortuna posed to him today. Javier Fortuna started boxing in almost like a dirty boxing tactic in the first couple rounds, where he was clinching, fighting on the inside, trying to reset and counter on the reset. Then he ends up switching to where he ends up fighting from the outside, ends up moving around the ring, utilizing the ring fairly well. Then we see him come back to the center and want to fight inside the pocket. Then he ends up choosing to and brawl it out, right? So he goes from brawler to boxing, to being a defensive fighter where he baits JoJo Diaz to come for him. He gave so many looks today, Javier Fortuna, and unfortunately for him, JoJo Diaz was as game a fighter as anyone, and he showed up to fight. He was hurting Javier Fortuna several occasions down the stretch where it looked like JoJo Diaz was about to drop Javier Fortuna, but he never managed to do so. JoJo Diaz does lose a round for punching in the back of the head and not listening to the referee's warning. That round I ended up scoring at 9-9 as JoJo Diaz ended up winning that round, but ends up becoming a 9-9 round because of that point deduction. Great showing by him. He ends up getting the decision win. He beats Javier Fortuna. He marks him up fairly well. There was no arguing on behalf of Javier Fortuna this go around. No excuses. He knew JoJo Diaz was a better man. JoJo Diaz outpointed him, outlanded him, hurt him, and outboxed him. He beat him. JoJo Diaz was a better man. It's incredible to see that his power has transitioned from 126 to 130 and now at 135 so well. He still has power. He has plenty of it, and it showed today. He marked up Fortuna fairly bad. Fortuna would be a tough test for anybody. This is the boogeyman in the division, and JoJo Diaz just beat the boogeyman. Someone who relinquished his title on the scales in the 130-pound division, debuts in the 135, wins the WBC's interim version of the title, and is now in line. As he called out, rightfully so, he called out Devin Haney. He's in line for that title since he holds the interim version. And he also called out Ryan Garcia, which would be Golden Boy Promotions' moneymaker. If they were to set that up, Ryan Garcia against JoJo Diaz would be a good sell and a great headlining event for Golden Boy Promotions. We move on to the main event between Gilberto Ramirez, El Zurdo, Ramirez versus Sullivan Barrera. This was a fight that it was a very tense style fight. To begin with, Sullivan Barrera quickly started landing his looping right hooks, quickly started trying to impose his power on Ramirez. Ramirez stayed composed, took a lot of punishment. You could see his face reddening from time to time, but he stayed composed and he kept bringing the fight. He kept landing some mean uppercuts on Sullivan Barrera and eventually ends up putting him down in round 3, and then he drops him down in round 4. These were not due to uppercuts. These were brought on because of body shots. Strong body shots to the mouth of the stomach. It was just great punching, great placement by Zurdo Ramirez on those punches as he put Sullivan Barrera down on the canvas in the 3rd, twice in the 4th, and eventually the fight gets stopped. In that same 4th round, Sullivan Barrera takes another loss, the 4th loss of his career. Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez remains undefeated at 42-0 now with 28 knockouts, and he is a force to be reckoned with in the 175-pound division. You got Joe Smith, you got Bivol, who he called out, you got Canelo looking to move up and challenge once again in that division. Kovalev is still around there. You got Anthony Yarde. It's an awesome division. Gilberto Ramirez will have his hands full there. And he may very well land that fight against Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez said he will move up if he can't land the Caleb Plant fight. And it looks like Al Heyman and PBC are not seeding right now. They're not looking to make a deal with Canelo Alvarez and allow Caleb Plant to unify all 4 titles in the 168-pound division. So we'll see what happens with Zurdo Ramirez, where he goes. Nonetheless, this is a huge successful moment for him in his career, because he had so many for years. He lost a couple years in his career due to inactivity because of contractual agreements, similar to what like Andre Ward experienced back in the day. Zurdo Ramirez, with the contractual agreements, lost time in his career. He is now 30 years old, if I remember correctly. He ended up creating his own promotional company, parting ways, and looking to promote himself. He ended up fighting in this past December, out of Galveston, Texas, and what was listed and reported as a convention center in Galveston, but it looked more like a high school gym with maybe 20 to 30 people in attendance. He fought Alfonso Lopez, if I remember correctly, and he ends up beating him. He ends up stopping him late in the later rounds of that fight. But from going from contractual agreements to promoting himself, fighting in a small venue, which resembled that of like a high school gym, even though it was listed as a convention center, maybe it was. If it's listed as a convention center, it had to be a convention center. It was just very tiny, and it resembled that of a gym. going from that 6 months ago to now headlining a Golden Boy Promotions card and becoming a Golden Boy fighter now. That's a huge success story for Gilberto Ramirez, for El Zurdo. So that was impressive in its own. Now, as far as the quality of the fight between him and Barrera, it would have been great as maybe the third fight with Seniesa and Tenkai Tsunami moving up to the co-main event, and I would have made JoJo, Javier Fortuna, the main event. Just Monday back quarterbacking, right? Because the event already happened. All fights were very impressive. Zurdo Ramirez stopped Sullivan Barrera in the 4th round. JoJo Diaz wins the WBC interim lightweight title by decision win over Javier Fortuna. Seniesa Estrada gets the nod over Tenkai Tsunami and a second world title. And William Cepeda ends up stopping Robert Garcia's prospect in Hector Tanajara. Naoko Fujioka, successful at 45 years of age, successfully defends her title, her flyweight title against Sule Murbina, who was a game fighter and who I really thought was going to win just by the way that the first half of the fight played out. But then she let off. It looks like Fujioka will be attempting to unify her title against none other than Marlon Sparsa. If that comes to fruition, that'll be an amazing fight to see. If it doesn't, then that would be because Marlon Sparsa and Seniesa Estrada may be locking horns for a rematch fight. So we'll see how that plays out. Congratulations to the fans that were in live attendance. Congratulations to all of us. This was an amazing event. Thank you to the matchmakers at Golden Boy. Now, Chris Mannix, Sergio Mora, amazing commentators. As far as the professional side of the card was, but man, if you guys put Duran and Blair the Flair Cobb and to comment on the main event or an entire card, your viewership is going to skyrocket. These guys were awesome to listen to. They had me hooked from the beginning, and what was my day off, and it was supposed to be a productive day at that, where I was supposed to get all kinds of stuff done today. I ignored it all because I got hooked listening to these guys as they were talking between fights. I end up staying there. They end up giving me a shout out actually in the 4th round of that Sulim fight. And listen, I got hooked. I end up tweeting into to Duran, and he ends up giving me a shout out in the 4th round of that fight. So if you get to watch it back, you'll recognize, if they play that portion of it, you'll recognize the show being mentioned. But listen, it was something like I haven't experienced in a while, and all in all, it was a Friday. It was a Friday evening, and I spent the entire evening watching these fights, enjoying these fights, loving it, and it felt like a Saturday. By the time that everything was done, I was telling myself, did anybody notice that it was a Friday and not a Saturday? Because it felt like a Saturday, thanks to the high quality of fights that they provided us. So amazing Friday, July 9th, one that will live in my memory, July 9th of 2021. Thanks to Golden Boy. This is how good that card was, in my opinion, from top to bottom. Check out all the fights if you haven't checked them out. Definitely check out the ones that we talked about today. Javier Fortuna is going to be trouble for anybody in the 135-pound division, but JoJo Diaz is going to give headaches to Devin Haney or anybody else. Definitely Ryan Garcia will have his hands full against JoJo Diaz, more so than he would against Gervonta Davis. That is being honest. That's my honest opinion. I think Ryan Garcia wouldn't have his hands full against Gervonta Davis. He would just have to worry about being knocked out, because Gervonta Davis is power punching by way of hooks and by way of not uppercuts, but well, yeah, he did have the uppercut against Leo Santa Cruz, but more so his looping hooks is where that power, where he tends to unleash that power. With JoJo Diaz, it's more of a boxing game. It's more of an outpointing, an outsmarting style type of fight that Ryan Garcia would have to deal with. His speed would probably be mitigated by the clean punching that JoJo Diaz has and possesses. So that would be an interesting fight. JoJo Diaz against Devin Haney, since he's the interim champ to Devin Haney's title. That would be an entertaining fight. Devin Haney's speed versus JoJo Diaz boxing and timing. That would be a great classic fight to watch. All right. I think I'm out of breath, guys. It's nearly an hour-long episode. I didn't want to get into this long of an episode, but what a freaking Friday night, huh? It was great. Seniesa Estrada gets a second title. Zurdo Ramirez cements himself as a who's who in the light heavyweight division. JoJo Diaz with this performance over Javier Fortuna, the boogeyman. That nod that he got over the boogeyman, nearly dropping him, possibly even close to stopping him in the later rounds of the fight, but didn't manage to. Impressive from top to bottom. That's it. That's all I got for you guys. Take care of yourselves. We'll talk soon, and I'll see you all on the next episode. Have a good one, guys. Thank you guys for keeping me company, for continuing to tune in, and feel free to shoot me some comments, shoot me some questions, or suggestions if there's a specific topic that you guys want me to cover. Other than that, I'm here for you guys. Thank you guys for all the love, for all the support. We're way past 100 episodes now, and we're shooting for 200 from here on out. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart, and stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. Have a good one. Take care. Peace.